8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Liam Hendricks, and you're watching Crosstown Crosstalk on the Barroom Network.
Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Every summer in Chicago, the sunshine spotlights the city's spectacular skyline. Its luxurious lakeshore, marvelous monuments, and the over 200 neighborhoods in the city. And it also brings to light two of the greatest sports franchises in the world. On the north side, it's the Cubs. On the south side, it's the White Sox. This is Crosstown Crosstalk.
Hello and welcome to Crosstown Crosstalk, presented by the Barroom Network. My name is Vinnie Parise, and I am super stoked to be here with you today. Baseball is reaching its climax as we end the regular season, and the playoffs are just around the corner. Of course, we are getting ready for the playoffs. There are a couple teams that still believe they have a chance to make the playoffs. The Chicago Cubs are one of them. The Chicago White Sox are not. There are White Sox fans that are rooting for their pal Jake Berger to make the playoffs. I'm sure there are plenty of White Sox actually rooting for the Cubs to get into the playoffs so that their family and friends could be happy. The jersey still says Chicago at the end of the day. That's how some people think. I'm rooting for my friend Jake Berger, friend of the Barroom Network, of course. But speaking of the Barroom Network, I thought today would be a great idea, great day to talk to the founder of the Barroom Network. Of course, I'm talking about my good friend, Aldo Gandia. Aldo!
Hey,
how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling better every day from my health issues, and it's always fun to be on your show, talk sports, and just catch up on stuff.
Absolutely. Now, I've been looking forward to having you on basically for, the last handful of months. I was like, you know what, Aldo, he's going to be fine. He's going to be great, and I can't wait to have him on the show again. It is my pleasure to have you back on the show, and I thank you in my head every single day for giving me a platform to yell and scream about sports.
It's been my pleasure. You've surpassed my expectations. Your knowledge of sports, your entertaining presentation of sports, your passion for sports. It's just what the Barroom wants and needs. And congratulations on what is this, year 3, I want to say?
We're in year 3, yep.
Outstanding. So let's keep it going, brother.
Absolutely. I love every second of it, and we're happy to have you. Now, part of what makes me crazy is baseball. I'm a freaking weirdo. I care way too much. I spent way too much time watching a team that barely reached 60 wins. Of course, we're talking about the Chicago White Sox. Yes, I echo my mom's sentiments. Glad you're recovering well, of course.
Thank you.
She's pissed off about the White Sox, too. I'm sure she cares so much. Yeah, they're terrible. And I know baseball probably hasn't been at the top of the mind throughout the summer this offseason when it comes to your sports. But, I mean, you got to have some kind of thought on this monstrosity.
Yeah. Well, at my age, I can only put up with so much disappointment. So early in the season, when both Chicago baseball teams started off poorly, I said, I'm going to limit the amount of baseball I'm going to watch. But I have been following the headlines and so forth. And with the White Sox, it's just so doggone disappointing. I truly felt that Tony La Russa was behind the team's lack of accomplishment the previous season. And I didn't know Pedro very well, but I did expect them to, perhaps perform at a higher level. Well, that hasn't been the case. And, I look at the personnel in the White Sox, and there are so many, in my opinion, good or promising players in that. And, of course, you're going to start any conversation about the player personnel in the White Sox with Lewis Robert. I mean, the guy is a budding star. He's going to be making a lot of money when that contract is done and he's signing up for a new one. And then, you look at guys like, Andrew Vaughn and other players on the roster. And I say to myself, this should be a playoff contending team, not a team with the horrific record that they have now. What is it, like 30 games under 500?
Yep, they're 60 and 98.
That is just atrocious. So I ask you, a guy who has, lived with this frustration every day of the year, why is this team not playing at least 500 ball?
Over the last handful of years, you chalk it up to injury. You could blame Tony La Russa. There were a lot of things. Now, last year I did tell people, be careful. This 81-81 White Sox team is the fifth best team since 2000. Like, it's not like they're so bad like we're seeing this year. And, it ended up being true. Like, this is actually the look of a bad baseball team. Like, 95 to 100 losses, you stink. You get to 102 losses, 105 losses, you're talking about being one of the worst teams of all time. But, as far as why, Luis Robert Jr., he's great. Andrew Vaughn, I still think there's another level he can get to. Eloy had his, issue with his health. It wasn't a baseball injury this time. He actually had a health issue that he had to deal with, and he came back from that faster than I expected. And he's played more games this year than he has in a long time, surpassing 100 for the first time since his rookie year. I know that's not that big of an accomplishment, but I mean, for him, it actually is.
Yes.
Yohan Moncada was very injured for the first half of this season, and he was terrible. And he's been the best hitter on the team since August. And you don't want to hear it, of course, because it's like, oh, wow, Moncada was good when the games didn't count. Like, where has he been for the last 4 years? Agreed. Totally get that. But I hate to, put it this way. He is the third baseman in 2024. So him playing better since August is better than him not playing better since August. And then the pitching. You get rid of Lucas Giolito and Lance Lynn. For as much as they have kind of come back down to earth a little bit since the 2021 season, they're still MLB starting pitchers that are heavily coveted in a rotation. That's why they both were acquired at the trade deadline. You'll start replacing those guys with guys who are supposed to be in AAA. Of course, you're going to lose baseball games and be down 4-0 after 3 innings. And, those are all the reasons that I think this team are where they are now. The 7-17 start after April is really where things started to fall off. They were above 500 in May. They went 16-15 in May, and they are one of those teams that they just gave up. Chubb says, dude, the Sox suck. Cubs are 3 times better. Duh. I'm not coping with anything. What are you talking about?
There's no argument here, Chubbs.
Yeah, that sounds to me like Chubbs is coping with the fact that they're going to choke away their playoff spot that they had a 7-game lead on over the weekend. Chubbs is the one who's coping here. Go Marlins. But yeah, I think the fact that they kind of just gave up, and that's to me a big issue. Pedro Grifol, he's a big issue too. He's worse than Tony La Russa. Nobody wants to, and you know me, I came on the show and screamed about wanting Tony La Russa's head every single week last year. Pedro Grifol has been worse. It is just a fact, in my opinion. There's fights in the locker room. This guy hates that guy. This guy's doing this. Someone might have punched someone in the face in the All-Star break and left early. That's just decommitment to the team. There's so many issues with this team, and it basically all comes down to the coach and the owner of the ball club.
Jerry Reinsdorf is going to always be one of the most interesting sports owners in Chicago history. I mean, he's got the 6. Chubb says that reaction was totally.
I know the game Chubbs plays. I know the game he plays. I'm well aware. I play the same game, Chubbs. You can't out troll the troll. How about that, Chubbs? I am the troll. Remember that. Remember that.
But, with Jerry Reinsdorf, he did bring us 6 NBA titles. But you got to remember that I always feel that he kind of stumbled into that because he bought the team the year after Michael Jordan was drafted by the previous regime. And so he did just enough to surround Michael Jordan with the right players to eventually win a championship after 6 seasons of frustration. Jerry Krause, was for all his faults, he did get the proper lineup around him. He finally figured out how to do it. Now, I also blame Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause for the Bulls potentially not winning more championships if Jerry Krause would have been a better general manager and a general manager that the players liked to play for as opposed to disliked. Perhaps Jordan would have never retired, and they would have had, instead of 6 NBA crowns, they would have had 8 and competed for the Boston Celtics record of 9 championships in 11 years. That could have happened if the general manager would have been the kind of guy that inspired the players to go for those records. But getting back to Jerry Reinsdorf, he just has, either been the luckiest guy around, or maybe he's good and we don't give him enough credit. What do you think about Jerry Reinsdorf overall in terms of his ownership of Chicago sports teams and his media company not monopoly, but kingdom that he has with NBC Sports and Comcast?
Yeah, so I think Jerry Reinsdorf is a very smart businessman. You don't become a billionaire owner by, being a dummy. Okay, so I'm not going to discredit his brain by any means. I do discredit his want or care for the sports teams that he owns to be the best versions of themselves. He did luck into Michael Jordan. Remember, Michael Jordan wasn't the number 1 pick. The Bulls got so lucky. That is the greatest. And listen, was it Hakeem Olajuwon who was the number 1 pick in the draft?
Yes.
Great player.
Oh, yeah.
Hall of Famer. I think number 2 was a bust. But number 3 was Michael Jeffrey Jordan. My mom could have owned the team. My dad, my grandpa, they all could have owned the team. And they would have won 6 championships. I do believe that Jerry Krause, the Scottie Pippen, getting what's his name for the third run, Dennis Rodman. Even guys like Kerr and all the bench players that were great. That Bulls team was well put together, but you had Michael Jordan. Okay, the LeBron James had a couple championship teams built around him too, and he did a lot of that work. Not even the general managers of those teams. And then you get to the 2005 White Sox. Okay, they were 99-63 in the regular season, which is a phenomenal record. There is only two teams with a better record than that in Major League Baseball right now, heading into the final weekend of the season. The Dodgers will probably surpass it. They are 98-61 with 3 games to go. I'm sure they will break the 99, at least get to tie that record. They probably won't lose the upcoming series, but you get what I mean. That was a great record. That was a great team. Kenny Williams put together an island of misfit toys that season, and they went on one of the most magical runs in MLB history. They had 2 40 home run hitters, Jermaine Dye and Paul Konerko. Nobody else on that team was like a real home run threat every single time they came up to bat. You had Scott Podsednik, had 0 home runs in the regular season, and then he hits 2 in the postseason. 1 was a walk-off, and 1 was a game winner during the regular part of the game. Tadahito Iguchi, who knew who Tadahito Iguchi was before 2005? Juan Uribe had one of the most miraculous Derek Jeter-like catches in the postseason. AJ Pierzynski having just the smartest brain I've ever seen from a catcher. Joe Creedy, until his back hurt, was one of the best finds they ever had. So, all of these things came together. Oh, and the pitching staff. I didn't even get to that pitching staff with Contreras and Burley and Garland and Freddie Garcia. They got hot at the right time, and as a result, Jerry Reinsdorf is the winningest owner in professional sports right now. He's got Bob Kraft by 1, right? I think Bob Kraft has the 6.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I guess he should be proud of that. He's the owner of 7 championships, but it could have been more.
It could have been
more, and it could have been more recent. And also, sports very much is, Aldo, and you know this better than anybody, being a Chicago Bears diehard like you are. What have you done for me lately? The 85 Bears might be the worst thing that ever happened to the Bears. It's also the best thing that ever happened to the Bears. But we still sing the Super Bowl Shuffle, and it's been 40-something years.
That's right.
Then they don't care anymore. It's like everybody's satisfied because they have the 85 Bears. I'm never satisfied. I hope my favorite teams – I want the Devils to win 6 Stanley Cups with their core that they're about to go through right now. You just can't stop. You have to keep going. And Jerry Reinsdorf hasn't done that as an owner. I wish he had, but the White Sox, they're just in a bad spot right now because of it. But I do think he hasn't always put his best foot forward and made the fans his top priority.
Well, you wrote a great article for Fansided today about Dylan Cease, and he's pitching tonight. And you wrote in that article that he pitched brilliantly in his last start. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for in this remaining 3-game series, is individual performances. Cease has to make a promise that he's going to come back and build upon his 2022 season, and other players who are going to play in this series, have to give us a glimmer of hope. And then hopefully then in the offseason, the White Sox and their new management group will make the right player acquisitions to put together a competitor, or gut it in the way that we can see promise that in a year or two they can start to contend year after year after year for playoffs. And so that's what I'm looking for. And then we got to talk a little bit about the Cubs, because as you said at the beginning, the Cubs are the most interesting team in baseball here in Chicago, and they still have a glimmer of hope of making the playoffs. Now, this collapse, what is it, 10 out of 14 games they've lost? They actually had, before that losing streak, they had a 92% chance of making the playoffs. And now, after last night's loss, it's down to like 15-20%. What a disaster. And that's the thing about the Cubs. This is like an old girlfriend, or old, in my case, old wife, that just keeps breaking your heart over and over and over again, which is why I eventually stopped watching them, because the heartbreak is so much. And when I saw what happened in Atlanta, the Suzuki drop, that was reliving other heartbreaks in Cubs history. It was deja vu all over again. And so I'm actually pulling for them to win, unlike you. I know you're going for Florida Marlins, which is why you strategically wore that hat. But I'm actually putting, because I'm a Chicago sports fan, and I want all the Chicago sports teams to do well. But my confidence level is 0.0 that they're going to do anything to make us proud.
Let me be very clear about something. I love Jake Berger. He's come on the show twice, and he's probably going to come on a third time based on some things that I've heard in conversations I've had. Love Jake Berger. He's on the Miami Marlins. I wanted them both to make it. And if you notice, Aldo, this season, I haven't tweeted as much funny things about the Cubs this season because – and that's why I laughed at Chubbs' comment at the beginning of the program when we first were talking. I have not once ripped on the Cubs this season. They were funny to make fun of a little bit early in the season when they were kind of stinky pre-May-ish, kind of got off to a bad start. But like when the White Sox are this bad, I don't run my mouth about the Cubs. I have a brain. I'm not doing that. There were people yesterday like laughing that the Cubs lost to the Braves and the Packers got killed by the Lions on the same night. I'm like, what? The Bears are 0-3 and they're the worst team in the NFL, and the White Sox are about to be 40 games under 500.
Right.
I mean, I'm not making fun of anyone here. Me rooting for the Marlins is strictly Jake Berger business. I was rooting for the Diamondbacks to be the team that got ousted, and the Marlins to come in. And then if the Cubs made it, like, certain people, a lot of people on the network here, family of mine, they'd all be happy, and we'd watch playoff games together. And I'm going to be spending some time in Wisconsin next week, and if they do make the playoffs, their likely opponent would be the Milwaukee Brewers, and I do think a Brewers-Cubs matchup at a bar in Wisconsin would be very fun. That in that regard, I'm also kind of rooting for them to get in, just so I can, cheer on the Brew Crew with a couple of my fellow Wisconsinites, but because I have to hate them during football season. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be an interesting weekend for the Cubs. They ran out of gas, it seems like. And the Atlanta Braves, they clinched the best record in Major League Baseball en route to sweeping the Chicago Cubs. I mean, I think everything they've done this season is actually great. They were 7 games under 500 on July 4th. When we were all lighting our sparklers and swimming and having a barbecue. The Chicago Cubs were 7 games under 500. Now they enter the final series of the season with a chance to make the playoffs. And listen, the Marlins, they're playing the Pirates. The Pirates have played the Cubs hard here in the final stretch of the season and made it tough for them. The Diamondbacks are playing they're playing someone good, if I remember correctly. They're playing the Houston Astros, who are also fighting for their playoff life. So to come into the series thinking the Cubs are dead is just inaccurate. They really do have a chance. I would put it, I think, what did you say the odds statistically are, like 15%?
Of making the playoffs, they've dropped to under 20%, between 15 and 20. I saw.
That's interesting to me. I think a lot of that has to do with tiebreakers. The Cubs do.
Actually, it's 17.7 according to Fangraphs.
Okay, and Fangraphs is pretty mathematically accurate with a lot of these things, especially when it's only 3 games that they kind of have to dissect here. The Cubs don't hold tiebreakers over the Marlins or the Diamondbacks, so they essentially have to, at minimum, win 2 of the 3 against the Brew Crew this week. But they also they need help from the Marlins and the Diamondbacks here to not win games. And the Brew Crew. Hey, we can eliminate our biggest rival this week. They're clinched. They clinched the NL Central. A lot of the times I think they would rest their best players. I don't think that's happening this weekend because the Bears let the Eagles get into the playoffs 2 years ago. That's way more than that now. Wow, 5 years ago. They could have rested their starters in the second half when they realized they weren't getting the bye, and the Vikings would have gotten in the playoffs over the Eagles. How'd that work out for you? You can't. Sometimes you got to be strategic with this stuff. If I were the Brewers, I would try so hard to eliminate these guys. And yeah, that's where I stand on the Cubs right now. They're a great team, and they're only going to open their pocketbook and spend more money this offseason. Got to extend Bellinger. They need a third baseman, a bullpen, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's been, when they traded away, all their star players from their World Series, when I thought to myself, oh no, this is going to be another one of those long rebuilds where they're going to gut the whole thing. It's going to be so painful, but they've actually exceeded my expectations, and so credit to them. And so hopefully maybe they're building something here so that the 2024 season could provide us with a really World Series contending team, a real World Series contending team. I wanted to ask you, because one of the great things about Crosstown Crosstalk is that you talk Cubs and White Sox, but you also talk about baseball teams across the country and baseball players across the country. And it's a great way to stay on top of Major League Baseball, not just the Cubs and White Sox. Well, the kid who just stole that 70th base and made a new category for baseball records. I got the video here of him stealing the base. It happened against the Cubs in the 10th inning. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the record, and then also wanted to ask you, what did you think about the Chicago Cubs announcers who were critical of the fact that they stopped the game to give him the base and ran a montage highlight? They were saying this is disgusting. This shouldn't be. What are your thoughts? Were the Cubs announcers sour grapes?
So, first of all, Ronald Acuna Jr. is probably going to win the MVP now. He's leading Mookie Betts like 2 weeks ago, and then Acuna got to 40-70. Listen, I would sign up. I tweeted this from the Southside Showdown account. I would sign up for the White Sox to have a 40-30 guy. Right, like they would never even think about having a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr. Could they have waited till the end of the game, considering the next pitch ended the game? Literally, the next pitch ended the game. Yes, they could have absolutely done that. Do I care that they didn't, though? No, and I'm not saying that with any kind of Cubs hate whatsoever. Ronald Acuna Jr. is unreal. Okay, and yes, they ran that montage, and Boog Sciambi was all pissed off about it. Like, whatever, that's fine. But I kind of get where they're coming from. Like, the game's literally about to end. Like, you can't wait 5 minutes. Like, they're the next one. But, when players reach those types of milestones, we see them get celebrated on the spot. Now, is Ronald Acuna Jr. joining the 40-70 club, Babe Ruth breaking, or Barry Bonds breaking Henry Aaron's record? No, it's not. Right. Is it someone breaking the ERA title record or the whatever record? No, it's not. But it's something for him to be proud of. Now, the new rules helped Ronald Acuna Jr. steal 70 bases. There's no doubt about that. You can't make a third motion to first base. Otherwise, if you don't actually get him out, I think it's a balk. Yes. If they mess up on the third try, you can only, make 2 breakaways from the mound. Otherwise, yeah, that happens. So it makes it a little bit easier for guys to steal bases. After the 2 pickoff moves, you're going to be able to get a little bit of an extra step for the lead. But I mean, hey, it's something that no of the 2 sides are going to agree on. Cubs fans are going to be mad about it. Braves fans are going to be like, dude, what are you talking about? We're the Atlanta Braves. We're going to celebrate our guy who's going to go win the MVP. Sometimes baseball is about statistical achievements. I think more than any other sport. Baseball, and listen, you know me, I love every sport. I'm not biased towards one or the other. baseball, more than any sport, is a statistical celebration sport. We love when guys break records. When so-and-so hits, we made a big deal about Judge setting the American League record. It wasn't even the Major League Baseball record. When he hit his 60-second home run, every baseball fan in the world got in a circle and you know what. Like, it was just, one of those things. Like, we love when that stuff happens, so they celebrated it in Atlanta. I'm not at all mad about it.
Chubbs says, I thought I'd be happy about your misery, but I'm not. I hope the Sox are good next year. I got to say this. I follow
Not
Chubbs.
miserable.
Yeah, I follow Chubbs on social media. It seems like he's gone through this, life transformation. He's posting philosophical sayings about being good to your fellow man and stuff. And I'm like, oh, Chubbs. When I first met Chubbs on social media, he was like this crotchety old man, get off my lawn. This tweet is meant for you kind of stuff. And now he is like, wishing people well, telling people to be nice to one another. Chubbs is, he says now, I thought I'd be happy. Oh, that's the same one. Chubbs has gone through a transformation. Good to see Chubbs. Congratulations.
I like Chubbs. Listen, I'm passionate about sports. Chubbs is passionate about sports. When Chubbs and I first started going at it about this White Sox Cub, we actually haven't talked in a while. I don't know if he's been watching the shows all year. I mean, I kind of think he hasn't based on what he thinks. But when I first did all that Cubs, don't forget the Cubs were really good in the first half of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was running my mouth because the White Sox were really good too. That's a rivalry. It's fun. They're both good. When one is brutal and one is awesome, I'm not the one. I might be happy for my boy Jake Berger this weekend, but you're not going to see me like, I'm just not going to do that this weekend. So,
yeah,
it's just one of those things. I probably would do it for like the Guardians or the Twins or something like that, unless my guy Twins Ted was coming on the show, then I would probably keep my mouth shut. But yeah, I just love it all so much, and nothing at the end of the day is personal for me.
There you go. Yeah, regarding Acuna, I was going to say the same thing you said. Baseball is a game about records, and so, in my opinion, stopping the game to celebrate the first player ever to hit 40 home runs and get 77 stolen bases, I think it's a good marketing idea. The baseball has to think of ways of maintaining their audience base and growing that audience base. And that video that I just showed of him holding up the base, that's great video. That is good stuff for kids and old baseball fans to rejoice. You make a great point. It's a lot easier now to break records like that, because rules have changed, but rules have always had like every record in baseball history books should have an asterisk. When Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs, unfortunately, half the great ball players in the country were not allowed to play baseball. African Americans were relegated to the Negro baseball leagues and so forth. And so, every record, has some kind of a little bit of an asterisk. I don't want to say a blemish because it's still a major accomplishment because you're playing against other good ball players. But when you're excluding, a lot of good ball players, it still is an accomplishment. And when you hear that in the Negro baseball leagues, one player hit like 80 home runs one season, that why isn't that considered in the history books? So I totally get what you're saying about Acuna, and I think that the Chicago Cubs announcers should have probably just soaked in the moment, let it play it out, and not sound like they were, sore losers. I think they had this feeling that this game is over, the Cubs are doomed, and so that's why they lashed out against the Braves organization.
Absolutely, and you know what? Yes, I despite the rule change, I still think this is an incredible thing because I'm looking at the stolen base leaders. Everybody has the same rules as Ronald Acuna Jr. Everyone has the same new rules. The guy in second place is Esteury Ruiz, and he has 65. A nice total.
Yeah.
His home run total, 5.
Yeah.
Okay, 5.
That's huge.
Then the only other player over 50 stolen bases is Corbin Carroll. He has 25 home runs. So a really nice season for him. But then those are the only 3 over 50, and there's only 6 guys over 40. So everybody has the same rules, and Ronald Acuna Jr. is the only one that got to 70. So, and that's what I always say whenever there's new rules and people, make changes. Like, listen, we all think Matt Ryan's a great quarterback. But when he breaks Dan Marino's passing record, do we all of a sudden assume that he was a better quarterback than Dan Marino? No.
Great point.
You know what I mean? Like, rules change. People understand that. They recognize that the game changes. And we know what it is that makes players truly great and how they elevate their team. Ronald Acuna Jr. is clearly one of those guys. He deserves to be celebrated. I'm not sure he gets to 40-70 next year. And listen, we heard it was 40-80 until about the All-Star break that people were gunning for him. It ended up coming back just a little bit, 40-70. We've been hearing about it since June. So, like, of course, right when he did it, they were going to make a big stink of it. Only one fan base in the history of the league is going to remember that it had one pitch left to go and it was annoying, and that's the Cubs fan base. And I get it. They're frustrated. I would be frustrated too. But it's a great MLB accomplishment.
It really is. It really is. And as for accomplishments with the Bears, let's see. I don't have any.
that they made it home from the game.
That's right. They made it home safely from Kansas City, despite the ass kicking they got there. But this Bears organization is under attack yet again, and it's for something that I've been saying for years and years and years. They don't know how to run an operation and get everything in synchronicity. You hire your president, who then hires the general manager, who then hires the coaching staff, and it's all done in unison and with vision in mind. When you're bringing in a general manager and who doesn't have the benefit of the blessing of the CEO president, you're going to head into some problems. A guy like Kevin Warren, with his experience in not only working in a football organization like he did with the Vikings, but also head of the Big Ten for years, he could challenge Ryan Poles and say, okay, you want to bring in a head coach who has no head coaching experience, and then he's going to bring in an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator who've never called plays at the NFL level. Don't you think it would be a better idea to have a more diverse triad at the top? A head coach, perhaps, maybe a rookie head coach. Let's interview Mike McDaniel. He seems to be a great creative mind, but we team him up with a veteran defensive coach like a Vic Fangio, who's now working with Miami with Mike McDaniel. Somebody who can challenge your ideas, somebody who can, oversee the whole operation and put best practices in place, as opposed to how the Bears are doing it, bringing in Bill Polian, who, God bless Bill Polian, he had some accomplishments in the NFL, although only one Super Bowl title. And you're letting Bill Polian do this haphazard search where they're interviewing coaches and general managers at the same time. Who does that? No other organization does that. And so it's an organizational problem. Fans are learning more and more about the history of all of these mistakes that the Chicago Bears organization have done since the McCaskies took over, since Muggs Hallis died, and then George Hallis passed away. Unfortunately, McCaskies appear to be some very, very nice people, but just don't have the intellectual capacity on how to build a winning football organization, and we're all suffering because of it.
There's no doubt. I can't believe, and it was hard to kind of not be positive last time they made a regime change, but looking back, I'm like, you were really okay with them hiring Matt Eberflus before Ryan Poles? I don't know, was it technically before? But if it wasn't before, they had the idea that they wanted him to be the coach before they hired Ryan Poles. Might have signed on the dotted line first, but they knew they wanted Matt Eberflus. And it's not like you're getting Kyle Shanahan before you hire your GM. It's not like you're getting Mike Tomlin before hiring your GM, one of the great coaches of all time, at any point. You're hiring a rookie head coach with a defensive mind basically around the same time as you're hiring your GM. It hasn't worked for the past handful of regimes. They have Ryan Pace and they bring in John Fox, but they already had the quarterback in place. And then they bring in a quarterback, and then they fire John Fox and they bring in a new quarterback before they bring in what Matt Nagy, and then Matt Nagy has a new quarterback, and he drafted Mahomes in Kansas City, and he stuck with Trubisky in Chicago, and then they draft Justin Fields and fire Nagy after 1 year of Justin Fields, and now it's pretty clear to me that Justin Fields isn't the guy for Eberflus and Poles, but they're going to keep Justin Fields, or they're going to keep Eberflus. They'll draft a bad quarterback and then fire Eberflus next year. Like it keeps like a cycle repeating itself. They need to marry all these guys at the same time. And
Right.
I'd be cool if Ryan Poles stuck around, but you gotta this offseason, if they don't get rid of Eberflus and draft a new quarterback with the number 1 or number 2 pick, whatever it is they have, I think it's gonna fail again, and it's gonna be very frustrating. I know I'm always the pessimistic one about the Bears, but I just can't find myself to sit here and lie to the people watching the program. Like, oh yeah, I think they'll figure it out. I think there's nothing wrong with Fields. Aldo, do you know the last opponent Justin Fields threw 300 yards against?
Yes, I do. Clemson.
Yeah, Clemson.
I saw that recently.
Not an NFL team. I just about fell off my chair when I realized Clemson in the college football playoff in 2021 is the last time that Justin Fields threw for over 300 yards in a football game. I mean, it is just unbelievable. I don't trust the running game. Everybody loves him. They act like he's the second coming of Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson. He wasn't a running quarterback at Ohio State. He threw from the pocket. And I'm cool if he developed and added an extra part of his game. That's what becoming an NFL quarterback is all about. Mahomes is very mobile. Josh Allen can make plays with his legs. Aaron Rodgers in the prime of his career was able to make plays with his legs. Really, Tom Brady and Drew Brees were kind of the last of their kind to be pure pocket passers. And if it collapsed, they were getting sacked.
Right.
But for the most part, Justin Fields, he hasn't shown the ability, and we're gonna do it all over again. I love when people say Caleb Williams isn't gonna go to the draft because he's making money from his NIL deal and all that. Caleb Williams is making $5 million from his NIL deal. Listen, I'd sign right up. I'd sign up for $1 million right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Bryce Young signed for $37 million. And that's a significant increase from anything he would make in college with NIL deals. So,
the thing with Justin Fields is we have several more games to determine if he can become a winning quarterback in the National Football League. And I want to bring this up because we have 2 number 1 draft picks. It would be great if Fields can prove to us I can be a very good NFL quarterback so that we can devote those 2 number 1 draft picks on 2 studs on the defensive line or wherever. There's a lot of needs. The issue is that it's not looking that way, and so we may have to devote one of those picks to a quarterback. Fine. If we do that, it's good. But let's at least give them until the NFL bye for the Bears, which is week 13. Let's see if starting against the Denver Broncos, who gave up 70 points and over 700 yards of offense last week, let's see if Justin Fields can rush for 100 yards and pass for 250 yards and pick up a victory and then go to Washington on Thursday night and throw for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns and run for 75 yards and start to prove that perhaps with certain adjustments to game plan and certain better performances by the surrounding cast, he can do it. Do I have a high level of confidence that he can? It's diminished, quite frankly, it's diminished tremendously over the first 3 weeks, but we have to put him through this test in order to see how we're going to continue this rebuild, because if we have to draft a quarterback, the 3-year rebuild is now a 5-year rebuild. You're not going to draft a quarterback in 2024 and then expect it to be a playoff team right away. So the coaching clearly has been a problem. When you bring in a Luke Getsy, who was the quarterback coach for Aaron Rodgers, who was a totally different quarterback than Justin Fields, you should have brought in somebody who had experience with running quarterbacks, who could be not as you said, Fields wasn't the running quarterback in college, but that has those kind of athletic skills, so that you can better use them, like with the Ravens have with Lamar Jackson. It's just a very short-sighted, narrow-minded decision to bring in a quarterback coach who has never coached a quarterback with those unique skills that Justin Fields has. And he's not creative. He doesn't use Fields in creative ways. I actually put up on my Barroom Network Twitter account, X account, I floated the idea. How about if we start using Justin Fields more like the Saints use Taysom Hill? And that way we get Tyson Bagent in the game and we can actually see him pass from the pocket and see if he can do it. But you've got, for at least 25% of the snaps on the offense, Fields is lined up at the running back position, at the wide receiver position. You have him in the wildcat position. You're doing all these creative things to disrupt what is going on with this Bears offense, because after every single game that Luke Getsy has been the offensive coordinator, the opposing team says, we know what they're doing. We know that we have to keep Fields in the pocket. And so they're game planning now because they've looked at the film, and Luke Getsy's not being creative enough to come back with a different look, a different solution to the problem. It's really a bad situation for us Chicago Bears fans.
Aldo, I've always had the opinion, and not always, it's kind of flipped in the last 5 or so years, but I think the quarterback impacts a team's ability to succeed more than any other position in any sport. The last 2 Stanley Cup champions had medium goalies. The last couple NBA championship winners were actually, they were teams. And I know Jokic is amazing, but the Denver Nuggets, they had a really good team. It's not like the LeBron James show or anything like that. I think football, more than any other sport, is impacted by this one position. And we thought Luke Getsy was a genius when he was with Green Bay. Well, it's amazing what it looks like when you got the MVP on your team, right? Like he looks like an offensive genius. Wow, look at this Matt Nagy. When he's in Chicago, he looks like a moron. And then he goes to Kansas City. Yeah, week 1 wasn't great, but I actually think people didn't give enough credit. And I wrote my tweets to create engagement, to make fun of Matt Nagy a little bit, because I like making fun of Matt Nagy and his dumb face. But they, all of a sudden Matt Nagy's a Super Bowl champion again, and he's an offensive coordinator that can drop 30 points in the first half. Well, he's got Patrick Mahomes. He's got the best player in the NFL slinging his plays. So, I think people do sometimes in football put a little too much emphasis on coaching. I'm not saying coaching doesn't matter. Without Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes would not have become the player that he is today. Bill Belichick helped Tom Brady become the GOAT. He worried about especially in the second half of the Patriots dynasty, when Tom was pretty much handling the offense with what's his name? Is it McDaniels I'm thinking of? And and Bill Belichick was in charge of the defense with the bearded guy with the pencil.
Matt
Patricia. I just think sometimes the players play the game, and again, coaching so important, but you need the quarterback to complement the coaching. Otherwise, everyone's going to look like an idiot.
Yeah, and so what we're left with this upcoming week is 2-0-3 teams, right? Facing one another. If the Bears lose against the Broncos, and Las Vegas has said that the Bears are 3.5 underdogs, I think the last line I saw. That's embarrassing in and of itself. But if the Bears do lose this game, and if they lose in a humiliating fashion, that it is clear that Kevin Warren has to step into the picture. You can't make a change with the Thursday night game coming on, but he's got to go into Ryan Poles' office and say, okay, this is not sustainable. Or if he's got to go into McCaskey's office first, but he's got to tell Ryan Poles, I need a plan for how we're going to improve this, and it has to be heads have to roll. Whether you're going to fire Luke Getsy and promote somebody on the offensive crew to be the play caller, that's a tough choice. I mean, who's the logical person? Janoko's never called a play in his life. So that's a tough thing. Or you're going to fire Eberflus and perhaps make Hightower the special teams coach, the head coach, and promote somebody from within to call the defensive plays, like Hoke, the defensive backs coach, who's had a lot of experience. And so something has to happen, because we can't go through the next 15, 14 weeks of this disaster. And it would be really bring fan loyalty towards Kevin Warren if he came out with a strong denunciation of the coaching staff and made those moves. And he said something like, I have ordered Ryan Poles to make these moves. And then Poles comes out and makes the announcements as to what changes have happened in the coaching staff. That's of course the worst case scenario. I'm hoping for the best case scenario, which is that the Bears win and Justin Fields starts working towards proving himself as a viable franchise quarterback for the Chicago Bears. I still hold a glimmer of hope that that's what's going to happen, but there's systemic problems with the Chicago Bears that have gone on for decades, and if Kevin Warren is not the guy that's going to fix them, if all he's going to do is bring in a fancy new stadium that's going to be half full because the Bears are an embarrassment to us here in Chicago, that's not going to be good enough. The Barroom Network will be totally focused on Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks because there's good things coming with the Blackhawks in a few years.
Yeah, I was racking my brain yesterday trying to figure out the last time all 5 of the major men's teams all missed the playoffs in the same season.
Mm-hmm.
And it was last year, but I'm like back-to-back years. I was racking my brain like, has it happened in back-to-back years where all 5 teams missed the playoffs in the same year? And if the Cubs miss this weekend, it'll be the second year in a row. But Ravi makes a good point. Was he this bad, Mark Trestman, comparing him to Eberflus? I'm gonna say, in terms of football X's and O's, he wasn't this bad, but I would still probably rather Eberflus because I don't think the Bears are going to have to go through a complete cultural overhaul when Matt Eberflus leaves the way they did when Mark Trestman left. Everybody hated everybody.
Yeah.
We probably would have hated each other during the Mark Trestman era. Just out of pure what's in the air, making everyone hate each other.
Yeah.
So
but
that's
the
where
one,
I stand
but the
on
one
it.
thing is Trestman does have a better 1-loss record than Eberflus.
well.
So from that standpoint,
I'd rather have my 0-0 record as Bears head coach than Matt Eberflus, who is on the precipice of going an entire calendar year without a victory. They beat the New England Patriots. I think it was Monday Night Football. It was either Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football.
Yeah,
it was a weekday game against
Yes.
the New England Patriots, and they won. And they haven't won since. Aldo, I got to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bears are going to be shelled by the Broncos over this weekend because I'll tell you why. They gave up 70 and they still scored 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears are on an NFL record streak of 13 straight losses. All of them, they gave up 25 points or more. You're telling me this Denver Broncos team that didn't score or that scored 20 points in a game that they gave up 70, the Bears aren't scoring 70. So I assume the Broncos are going to score more than 25 points. There's no way the Bears scores 25 points. There's no way. So that's why I'm thinking I'll be stunned if the Bears don't get beaten by multiple scores this weekend.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard to debate you on that because there's very little evidence that they can score that many points. I mean, this is a team that, the quarterback is having a hard time passing for over 100 yards, 99 yards passing in a game that's a rout where you normally see quarterbacks throw for 150 yards in the fourth quarter, just garbage yards when they're losing by 3-4 touchdowns. And Justin Fields couldn't even do that. So that's the disheartening thing. And I understand that the offensive line is not playing well. He's playing with his 20th different offensive line combination during the Eberflus era. I understand that Chase Claypool has looked like one of the worst trades in Bears history. I understand, that the defense is not giving him a short field to work with, but the tape, I'll use the phrase of somebody who used to work here at the Barroom, the tape doesn't lie. There's open guys downfield, and he's not pulling the trigger. And so you can blame it on the coaching. You can blame it on the offensive line. You can blame it on everything. But it is obvious when you take it's basic football. I learned this when I was in high school, when I was coaching a flag football team. Quarterback drops back on that third step. He plants that back foot, and then he fires the ball. It's a timing pass, and that's what Getsy has tried to get Fields to do, but he won't do it. 5-step drop, same thing. Plant that back foot, fire the ball. It's all based on timing, and it's not happening. And there are receivers open. It's not all the time that they're open. Not all the time that he has the protection to get rid of the ball. But when the receiver is open and he does have the protection, it's not happening. Evidence: 99 yards of passing. So that's the disheartening thing about Justin Fields is, can he flip a switch and turn that on at the very very least, at a minimum, to complement some of the other things that he does well, like getting out of the pocket and finding a man downfield. He's got a very strong arm, and of course using his legs. I hope that it happens, but I it's hard to argue with your prediction that they're going to get blown away.
Now let me ask you a question. There's one defensive-minded head coach that I could see being in the final 8, let's say, final 4, possibly even the Super Bowl, and that's Brian Daboll and the Buffalo Bills. We are very much in an offensive head coach type league right now. You think about Kansas City or Cincinnati or San Francisco or Philadelphia. All of them have offensive-minded head coaches, correct?
Yeah. Daboll, actually, wasn't he the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills? He was the one that got Josh Allen going.
And who's the coach of the Bills right now? They have a defensive-minded. I might have.
Sean McDermott.
That's who I'm. McDermott.
Yes.
McDermott. But you're right. Daboll's with the Giants now, right?
Correct.
Yeah. That was just a name fumble there. Getting two guys. I wanted the Bears to consider both of them as their head coach. I would have preferred McDermott, or I would have preferred Daboll, but they got this defensive-minded head coach. They're really the only team. The Steelers are good, but I don't know if they're great.
Right.
I'm very much heavily in favor of an offensive-minded head coach. Has Matt Nagy soured you on that from a Bears perspective, or would you lean offensive head coach?
No, I would definitely lean on an offensive head coach, because you're either going to inherit a quarterback who has promise and you want to get the most you can out of him in Justin Fields, or you're going to draft a quarterback in the first round and you want to make sure that the head coach is the proper guy to lead the development of that quarterback. So under any scenario, a first round quarterback next year or the continuation of the Justin Fields experiment, you need an offensive head coach. And we're at a point now where Mike McDaniel, who should have been interviewed for the Chicago Bears job. I know when he was available for the job, a lot of people were saying, well, he's another Mark Trestman, a guy with glasses, nerdy guy, and so forth. No, this guy is a really cool guy who relates to players. The Trestman thing is that he couldn't lead a locker room. Mike McDaniel can. He talks to the players on their level, and he's one of them, and he's so creative. He excites the players with game plans and so forth. And so you need, in my mind, you need to bring in someone who has an innovative offensive concept, particularly if you've got a running quarterback, a guy with such athletic skills. Can you imagine what Mike McDaniel could do with a Justin Fields? He might have him in that Taysom Hill scheme. He might have Justin Fields going down for bombs and hitting him with 50-yard passes as a receiver. And then on the next play, he goes in at quarterback and throws a 50-yard pass, 100 yards on one series. That's hyperbole, but I think the league is ready for the Chicago Bears are ready for ingenuity in the offensive head coaching position, offensive coordinator position, and we just don't have that. And Luke Getsy, God bless him, he seems like a nice guy in these press conferences, but he's preaching to the wrong choir here, because we can see through it. His words are not sinking in with the fans, and much less with the players. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's a shame. It's a shame that we are where we are right now, because over the summer, the Barroom Network is just turning out great content in terms of positivity. I read an article for DeWindy City in July about the Bears going 10-7, I think it was, when I looked at every game on the schedule. And then I watched training camp and I watched the preseason. And people called me negative again, whatever. They didn't look good in the training camp in the preseason. There were a couple nice highlights. But DJ Moore had a 70-yard touchdown pass or reception from Justin Fields. So in your head, you think to yourself, Fields got in the pocket and he hit DJ Moore for a 70-yard bomb. Incorrect. DJ Moore received the screen pass, and he's so agile and quick that he took care of these second and third string defenders that he was able to run all the way down the field for a touchdown. They both look the same on the stat sheet, but they both tell me that Fields isn't making these great reads down the field quite yet. Over-exaggerated good play by the Bears during the preseason, we now know in hindsight.
There is a very famous way at looking at grief in people's lives. There's 5 stages. There's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, there's depression, and then you accept the grief. And with Bears fans, I changed the acceptance to laughter. And I've gone beyond the denial, anger, bargaining, and depression stage, and now I'm just laughing at the whole thing. This is so funny how the Bears have managed to ruin this yet again. And unfortunately, on social media, I try to read as many of the posts as possible to get an indication of how fans feel. I still think there are a lot of fans who are in that denial stage about Justin Fields.
Absolutely.
They're just not seeing the reality. And, they will say things like, I'm not saying that Justin Fields isn't accountable for some of the mistakes, but I think they are putting too much emphasis on what's going on around Justin Fields and not seeing that this young man has been a monumental disappointment. He should be much further along in his third NFL season than he is now, despite all the hardships that he has around him.
Yes, there are a lot of people that still are when I tweet something negative about I like Justin Fields. I loved him at Ohio State. He was electric factory. I want him to succeed so bad. I am at the point you brought up laughing at them. Yeah, I think I'm going to laugh and root for them to possibly have the number one pick again. I think I know it's only week 4 and I shouldn't be rooting for them to lose already. And rooting for them to lose in an effort for them to get better, not because I dislike them. Different kind of rooting for them to lose than rooting for Green Bay to lose, for sure. I hope Green Bay wins just enough games to not have a top 10 pick. Be the 14th best team in the NFL, Green Bay. Well, I'll be so proud of you. But I also think Illinois just has such a stink on their football teams and at all levels. I think about college football in Illinois. NIU's been the best football team in Illinois for the better part of the last decade. They've won their conference. They went to an Orange Bowl. Illinois, Northwestern, all these, even not Notre Dame, they're in Indiana and they've been good. But all the teams from actually play in Illinois, that they all stink, including the Chicago Bears. And let me tell you something, Aldo. The Arizona Cardinals, who used to play their home games at Comiskey Park, they stink too. They still have that Illinois stink on them when it comes to football. The draft literally might go Bears, Cardinals. And if that happens, I am going to laugh so hard that the 2 Chicago teams are that bad in the NFL right now. And I kind of hope it does, because if they draft Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., that might actually be something really worth watching. But.
Indeed. Now, you asked me a trivia question earlier. I'll ask you a trivia question now. Who has the longest losing streak in NFL history?
The longest losing streak in NFL history. I believe it's 21 games. Mm-hmm. Is it 21?
I believe it is 29.
29?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is a long time ago.
Yeah, this has got to be something.
21, I believe, is second place. It's the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Jim McKay era. 29 games, and it belongs to a Chicago team, the Chicago Cardinals.
Let's go. Let's go, Cardinals. I firmly believe I would have been a Cardinals fan had they stayed in Illinois, because of where I come from and my roots, with my dad being a South Side fan and all that. And if they played their games at Guaranteed Rate Field or near it, they wouldn't play at there anymore. They don't really share stadiums anymore.
Right.
But the fact that they were like the South Side's team, I for certain would be a Cardinals fan. And not like that would be any better or worse than being a Bears fan.
They could have been the fastest. What was the greatest show on turf? Dick Vermeil and Mark Martz and Kurt Warner playing for the Chicago Cardinals and bringing a Super Bowl in the South Side of Chicago. That would have been pretty cool.
Yeah,
but that's another multiverse, another universe.
Yeah, there are other universes out there. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man can help take me to a universe where the Chicago Cardinals exist and they won a Super Bowl and I have like a championship. I only take full credit, and this is going to sound depressing. I only take full credit for one championship in my life, the 2005 White Sox. When the Devils won their 3 cups, I was 1, 4, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. And I'm not a Cubs fan. I take no credit for 2016. And I like the Blackhawks. I celebrated. I went to the parades. I enjoyed my friends. I loved that hockey was thriving in Chicago. But they're not my number one team. And the Bears were 85. I was 3 when I was like 4 when Jordan left Chicago. So I really only have one true championship Maybe that's why I loved Tom Brady so much. He made me feel something I wasn't getting anywhere else. But there's no Tom this year, Aldo. There's no Tom. I don't know what to do with myself. What are we doing?
I don't know. I hear you, man. Hey, you are the voice for so many Chicago sports fans. You really are. You express the frustration, the confusion, the anger. And by the way, you probably express all of those 5 stages that I mentioned before. Denial, no, not denial. Anger. You bargain maybe a little bit with the White Sox.
I used to deny. No, they're gonna turn it around, dude. That's a 5-game winning streak, and they're right back in it. They'll lose in October, Bears. You'll be right. No, I'm not with the Bears. Not lately with the Bears.
That is hilarious. This has been a fun hour, man. I really appreciate you inviting me on the show. I hope you'll have me back soon, bro.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You are amongst my favorite guests. I'm not calling anyone. I've never called anyone my favorite guest. I can't do it. But let it be known, you are very much in the running. I love having you on very much. Thank you again.
And I can't wait to see you, and we'll share a beer soon and talk more sports and get caught up with family and stuff. All right, brother?
Absolutely. I would love to do so. And to everybody watching in the chat, whether it be Mark or Ravi or who else was in the chat? Chubbs, my guy Chubbs. My mom was in the chat. To everybody, Travis. Well, I love Travis. Everybody watching in the chat that didn't comment, we appreciate you too. And if you're just catching us now, make sure you listen on Apple, Spotify. Go back on YouTube. We're on all sorts of different platforms that you can watch our show. I'll be putting on Twitter, all of it. Make sure you tune in. The Barroom Network has great Chicago Bears coverage this upcoming weekend. And guess what? Next weekend on Bar Down Talking Hockey, we are recapping what has gone on in the preseason so far, previewing the Metropolitan Division where this team plays, this Original Six team, my favorite team, the New Jersey Devils. That is our last division preview before we get into the 2023-24 NHL regular season. We are, I think, 10 days away from the regular season starting. Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks leading off the NHL season against the Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Make sure you tune in to Bar Down Talking Hockey to catch up on all that. And, of course, this show next week with playoff baseball to talk about. So everybody watching in the chat at home or listening on the Spotify, Apple, all that stuff at your leisure, as always, thank you for listening.
Another happy landing.